NLT version. Okay. And it's verses 1-3. And it says, I want you to know how much I have agonized for you and for the church at Laodicea, and for many other believers who have never met me personally. I want them to be encouraged and knit together by strong ties of love. I want them to have complete confidence that they understand God's mysterious plan, which is Christ himself. In him lie hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And so, I was just encouraged reading this scripture, reading about Paul and how he is longing, how he has this deep desire for a church and for people that he's never even met all of them before. And how he just has this understanding that when we have this unity, this oneness and deep connection together, how that leads to getting to experience the gifts of God's kingdom. Having confidence in who God is and who his character is. But yes, I think Paul's helping us to see just that overall picture of friendship and the many things that gets to lead to. And I feel like the Bible just paints so many clear pictures about this that we just aren't meant to walk alone. In the Old Testament, we learn about so many different people, but I think of two women who through death and grief and cultural isolation, who chose to stick together, saying, where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. And because of this choice to walk together, these women, being Ruth and Naomi, got to experience God's faithfulness. And Ruth became Jesus's great grandmother, something along the lines of that. I'm not sure how many greats. Because of this friendship, because of their choice to walk together, Ruth got to meet her husband, and they got to experience just this ultimate blessing of kingdom. And I think of three other people in the Old Testament, three men who chose to be faithful friends, who stood against society and the pressure to worship other gods, and stood strong, rooted in love for each other, rooted in faith for each other and for God. They, being Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, got to experience a miracle and should have died in a fiery furnace, but because of their friendship and choosing to stand together through that mission specifically, they experienced the presence of an angel, just a huge miracle like that. I also think of in the New Testament with Jesus, Martha, and Mary, who, when Martha and Mary feared for their brother's death, cried out to Jesus and asked for help. And then through him actually dying, they were able to just be real with Jesus, to weep at his feet, to express their frustration with him. I can't imagine that grief that they experienced and just how much they longed for Jesus to be there with them, and how Jesus in that moment wept with them. But through that, they got to experience resurrection power. So all these examples of friendship, we see like all the kingdom and all the treasure that came from these examples. And so I also wanted to read Psalm 133. And it says, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. It's like precious oil poured on the head, running down on the beard, running down on Aaron's beard, down on the collar of his robe. It is as if the dew of Hermon were falling down on Mount Zion, for there the Lord bestows his blessing, even life forevermore. And I love this because it's like even more emphasis on how unity and friendship and oneness leads to experiencing just God's blessing. God says how pleasant it is when his people live together. I just wanted to ask you all, is that how you view your friendships? Is that how you view the sisters and women who are on this call? Do you view it as this blessing that God gets to walk through or work through? And I think of two seasons in my life where I kind of lived in opposites. But one, my sophomore year, I remember just through different like hard seasons with my family or relationships, I would cry, sadly, cry in my bathroom, just asking God for help. And yeah, and I think I cut myself short of experiencing these gifts and this treasure that God wanted to give me, and how He wanted to help me through using other people. Because I had, like, as I would cry in the bathroom, I lived with 3 other sisters, and they were right outside of the door on the other side. And so I missed out on experiencing this treasure. But the very next year, I lived with 4 other sisters, again, totally all blessings. But going through a breakup, I remember coming home one night and just like crying in my bed. Um, and yeah, and my 3 of the sisters like just sat with me around my bed. And it wasn't about like what they said at all. It was just simply their presence with me in those moments that um, instead of like fearing vulnerability, that I was able to let them in to that moment with me. And I think I look back at that season and I'm so, so grateful because I was able to experience God in this new way that I hadn't before, and really learn how much He just walks with me every single day. Um, and yeah, so there's such a difference in these seasons where I chose to walk through my pain alone versus having people to walk with me, even if it was just in silence. Their presence mattered so much and made such a difference. And so I think like we weren't meant to walk alone. God didn't create us to live a life alone. And so, yeah, I was just thinking, like, imagine if we chose to like be each other's biggest fans. Like, imagine if we chose to be there for each other in those hard and dark moments. Like if we had a Ruth to say, where you go, I'll go, and where you stay, I'll stay, or a Meshach to go with the Shadrach and Abednego, who chose to stand with his brothers in the fire and chose faith over fear, or just having Mary to Jesus to be vulnerable and to share those hard feelings of like, where were you, Jesus? Yeah, to have someone to be vulnerable with. And so imagine how much kingdom we would be able to experience if we let other people into these moments, if we were able to walk with them, and how much we would be able to see God through all of our friendships. And I definitely know that through with friendships, it's not always sunshine and rainbows and easy all the time. And I know that there's conflict that comes up all the time. But I think like in those moments, like really praying for our hearts to be bonded, our hearts to be knit together in love, to see and value the other people above ourselves. Um, and yeah, and so I'm also super excited for this time. I'm excited to hear about these women who are about to share and get to learn from them and the ways that God has been walking with them, and the ways that 2 sisters have been able to walk together. And yeah, and I also wanted to challenge you, because I know that we get to watch sisters share for each other, but for you to like share with someone like, oh, I would love to walk with you more, like have a closer friendship, or just to share with someone who's already walking with you. Like, I'm so grateful for your presence. I'm so grateful for this moment that you are walking with me. And yeah, and so I will now pass it over to the other sisters.